start with the light heavyweight fight, the title fight. Obviously, we all thought that there was a chance that Jamal Hill could win this fight. I will be honest, I thought even as he was up 2-0, I was like, all right, if Glover gets the fight to the ground, I still think he can win this fight. And we saw, I think he got him down with around 2.5 minutes in the third. And I was like, uh-oh, here it comes. Credit to Jamal Hill. He survived. And he survived multiple times. A couple of takedown stuffs here, a couple of scrambles there. I mean, overall, impressive stuff. Went the distance. The cardio wasn't a factor. People said it was going to be a factor. It wasn't a factor. And he pretty much beat up Glover Teixeira to the point that Glover said, I'm done. I'm going to retire now. I don't want to do this anymore. Impressive. And for me, a bit surprising just how dominant he was. NYRic, what did you think?
Yeah, similar thoughts. I think he answered all the questions, right? What is his defensive grappling going to be good enough to keep Glover Teixeira off him? And he proved it was. When it was early, it was stuffing takedowns. When it was late, it was escaping and keeping himself out of danger while Glover was in his guard. So yeah, I expected to find out, just as Jamal Hill mentioned on our show, whether he expected to find out, whether he was ready to be a championship level fighter. And to me, he answered those questions and showed that he was. I would have predicted if it was going to be a fight that goes 5 rounds, it might be Glover's fight.
Yeah.
Not because of a question about Jamal Hill's cardio, just more of a question of the power kind of fades as you go, right? Are you going to be able to land the more devastating and dangerous blows as the fight goes on? Glover is somebody who's shown that he can be just as dangerous in the 5th as in the 1st because he's always in a fight. He has an insanely, I can't even describe his toughness. I can't even describe his chin. It's inhuman. I don't even know what to make of it. So I would have thought the longer it went, it would have favored Teixeira. But I was very impressed by Jamal Hill. He answered all the questions that I think people had about him, and now people are excited about the potential new matchups for him at light heavyweight.
There were 2 fights on that card on Saturday that I thought, oh man, I just wish that the fight would end, like someone would stop this fight. The Murphy-Andrade fight was getting a little bit uncomfortable, and this fight, I knew for a fact they would not stop the Glover fight, meaning the corner wouldn't stop it because they had to have known, hey, like in the back, he's probably like, if I lose this is my last one, like just let me go out on my shield here. And clearly he wasn't upset about that. I think, you saw him in between, I think it was the 4th and 5th, maybe the 3rd and 4th. I think it was the 4th and 5th where he was like, oh, come on, let's go.
Yeah, 4th and 5th, going into the 5th round.
Yeah. So, I mean, who can say anything bad? And one good thing about the last year and a half or so, I feel like our respect and admiration and just the attention shown towards Glover has grown a lot. Like, meaning, I'm happy that he's getting these moments. I'm happy that we're able to talk to him like this. I'm happy that he got the belt back in 2021, and I'm happy he got the moment in Brazil. But clearly at this point, like, there's nothing else to do. He needs to walk away. He doesn't need to take any more damage, and he's accomplished it all. He got the belt. He climbed the mountaintop. No mas.
Completely shifted how he's viewed in the later stage of his career. And nothing left to do at that point. Like, he did it. He did all the things that you completely changed the narrative around how his career is going to be remembered in the second half of it. And now there's nothing left for him to do. He captured that title. He showed people how great he could be for a sustained amount of time. As he said many times, people thought he was long in the tooth when he made it to the UFC. Then he had an entire incredible run. 0 left for that man to prove. I will push back a little bit on the idea that there's a similarity between the Andrade fight and the Glover fight.
How so? My only point there is, like, you could have made a case for that fight being stopped as well.
Oh my gosh. No. I actually agree with you, Ariel. I think there was a serious case, especially in that 3rd round. It started getting uncomfortable to watch. It was Lauren Murphy had absolutely nothing for Jessica Andrade. At that point, she was just taking unnecessary damage.
And that's where I agree. But where I disagree is I don't think the Glover and Hill fight should have been stopped.
No, but to the point where I was like, man, he is taking a serious amount of damage. I wasn't calling for it, but
he's fighting back. That's the difference in those fights. Lauren Murphy had 0 in return for Jessica Andrade. She had nothing. She was getting beat from pillar to post. There was no offense being mounted. She was just getting hammered. Glover Teixeira, he has made his career, at least the latter stage of this, the last half of this, on being in the fight in the 5th round and showing offense. And there was no point in that fight where I thought he's just a sitting duck. Yes, he took a lot of damage. Yes, it's not a great way to go out. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But there's a huge difference to me in terms of what the offense looked like in return from Glover in that fight versus what Lauren Murphy was giving back to Jessica Andrade, which was 0. That was just a one-sided beatdown.
By the way, true or false, Glover Teixeira was given more leeway.
Oh, 100% true.
Wait, you don't even know what I'm about to say.
More leeway than
Israel
Adesanya.
Yeah, we didn't realize
Izzy was fighting back too,
Izzy was fighting back. He was moving around.
No. That second round with like 3 minutes to go. No, 3 minutes to go in like the third round when Hill wobbled him bad, got him on the ground, and then is just laying down ground and pound. And like even the commentators are like, oh man, are they going to stop the fight? Goddard saying, you have to fight back. You have to fight back. Like, he definitely gave more leeway than he did to Israel Adesanya.
I'm sorry. And I love Mark Goddard. I would put him right now as the best ref in the game. Honestly, number one.
You disagree?
I disagree. Israel Adesanya was a sitting duck
He was
against one of the
moving.
hardest hitters in MMA history. It was not the
He
same.
literally had one bad moment in that fight. He had one bad moment of 20 seconds. That was it.
Yeah, that's a bad 20 seconds against a guy like Alex. That's
Glover had a
real
lot of bad
20
moments.
seconds. Different. That
Yes, Glover got wobbled bad on several occasions.
I think Goddard was like, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
Oh.
About to be. I mean,
See, Frank, you agree? You agree?
I think that Izzy was stopped early.
Yes. Finally, someone admits
it may have played into his mind. It's completely fair to ask that question. Disagree that those were the same stoppers.
GC, who's the best light heavyweight on the planet?
Oh gosh, wow, that's a tough question. I mean, I'm gonna still say Jiri Prochazka. I think he has the best claim to the belt. Obviously, he doesn't hold it, but Jamal Hill, the way that he impressed on Saturday, it's a tough argument to make against him. I mean, the way that he handled the grappling of Glover Teixeira, like I really thought he was going to be cooked when it got to the ground, and Glover had several opportunities. I mean, even in that fifth round, it felt like, when him coming out into the fifth round being like, let's go, in the back of his mind, he's knowing this is it. Like, I'm down on the scorecards. There's no chance. And then he immediately gets it to the ground at the start of the fifth round. And I mean, Hill handled it well. And then on the feet, it was as one-sided gets. I mean, Glover obviously had moments, but when you look at the statistics, like, he outdid him bad. I really want to see Hill Jiri.
Oh yeah,
and I think that'll stamp on who's
what a
the best
fun
light
fight that would be, right?
Oh,
I mean, I see no scenario where that fight is boring. Here's the big question: Yuri's timeline, which we'll obviously talk to him in about an hour about that. If he can't come back, he doesn't have to come back in the next 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. He had surgery not that long ago. I mean,
I hope he doesn't. By the way,
I think Hill fights one more time before we see Jiri.
Oh, so that's the problem. Who does he fight?
I mean, that is the problem. I think it needs to be one of Magomed or Jan.
I was going to say, you give Magomed
Which one?
I think.
Why Magomed? Why not Jan?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know how you decide between the two. They drew in the fight.
Sure.
Honestly, they should fight again. Well, how could you?
Oh God, I don't know if Dana White and the UFC can do that one.
By the way, it wasn't that bad of a fight.
I agree with you,
It really wasn't.
but the way they've marketed it, what's
You're
the
telling me
promo?
one of these BS fight nights can't use that as a main event?
Okay, so they roll out the main event. The promo tape is what? Dana White being like, "That's the worst fight I've ever seen. Let's book the."
No,
Jan did say when the fight ended, he was like, "Give him the belt." Like I didn't win this fight. I know he's changed his stance since, but like
here's what I think is a more interesting conversation, because I don't know the answer to who's the best light heavyweight in the world, but I think that creates an interesting conversation around. Could it be somebody who's in Bellator? Could it be somebody who's in PFL? Could it be somebody who's in one championship or another promotion? I think that's an interesting conversation, because I don't know that the lineage of this title has not been put in a position where we think that the UFC champion is automatically the best light heavyweight in the world. I think there's a conversation that could be had that maybe it's somebody from another promotion until that belt kind of stays with somebody for a while.
Vadim Nemkov versus Jamal Hill. Who wins?
Is that a fight? I mean, that's a fight, right?
Oh,
that's
it's
not a fight.
1,000% a fight.
That's not a fight where I go, oh wow, Bellator is going to get their doors blown off or get their brakes beaten off. Like, that's a fight. And I mean, Corey Anderson is a legit light heavyweight. Like, you could put him in a fight with a UFC guy right now, and that's a legit fight. So I think that's the more interesting conversation, is like, is Jamal Hill going to establish order in that division and prove himself to be the best light heavyweight in the world? That will be very interesting.
By the way, number one, I thought you were going to say John Jones is the best light heavyweight on the planet. I thought.
Oh well, if he could ever make that weight class again, he is.
No, I just
but he's not going to.
And number two, kind of a shame that Nemkov isn't fighting in 2 weeks on CBS, because that would have been a great thing for Bellator to say, like, this is the best light heavyweight. Like, we've got the best light heavyweight. You know what I mean?
Man, you got me thinking. Couldn't light heavyweight use John Jones more than heavyweight could? I mean, I'm just saying.
Oh, 1,000%.
If he just went down, I don't think it's not worth the discussion. He's too big now.
No, and I just feel like if you look at his last few performances, he needed this. He needed this challenge. He needed this thing. Like, oh, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. I would love to see it. The question. So, okay, what about this curveball? And it got a little bit weird after what happened on Friday. Is there any scenario in which Anthony Smith gets the title shot because they were supposed to fight in March? They took
a better story.
He's a lot more well known. The problem is he missed the weight on Friday, which I don't think.
I don't care.
Yeah, it sucks for him. He doesn't get
missed the
paid
weight on Friday, and he's coming off of a loss to Magomed.
Coming off a loss, missed the weight. They were supposed to fight. Super weird in retrospect. He was sitting in the locker room with Jamal Hill when they were showing the shots on Saturday. And there's a story. Tell me,
it's 2023, and we're still talking about like meritocracy, like
no.
losses, like that matters.
It's just he's got a few things going against him. Here's the thing. It's infinitely more sellable, in my opinion, than Magomed Ankalaev. That's why I feel like we should bring up Anthony Smith.
Let's do it. I'm all in.
All right.
Let's do it. I mean, the guy who I feel bad is kind of being left out is Rakic, right? Like,
okay, I spoke to Rakic, hoping to return around June or so the timing could work out. But you're going to come back after an injury like that to a title fight? I mean,
well, that's the thing.
Also, he's coming off of a loss to Jan Blachowicz.
Right. It's nothing's clean here. Well, it was a weird loss.
A weird loss, right? Like he got injured. There's no, but this is my point.
I just feel like it should be one of Magomed or Jan that gets
not Smith. Not Smith.
Could be.
I do not think so. No.
I think it becomes a bigger fight with Smith, so I wouldn't have a problem with it. And I think nobody here has established like I'm the guy.
How about Johnny Walker?
I'll take that too.
By the way, he's not that far away all of a sudden.
I mean, he beat Paul Craig, who has a win over Jamal Hill and Magomed Ankalaev.
The guy who we all kind of wrote off as being like a clown, now all of a sudden is like, oh, maybe he's coming into his own. Who would have thought? I mean, by the way, we have a clip of me talking to Jamal Hill. Can we pull up this clip real quick? It's February, I believe, of 2022, right? Is it February? I'm pretty sure that's the first time he was on. And I asked him a very quick parting shot question. This is what he said. Finish this sentence for me if you can. Jamal Hill will be UFC champion by?
In the next year.
In the next year. This time next year, you're champion already.
In the next year.
Okay, so in the next year, is that 365 days? Is that by the time 2023 is over? Either way you slice it, it has been less than 365 days since he said that to me. Pretty damn incredible. I will be honest, when he said that, I was like, I don't know if I see the path, but I love the confidence. He freaking nailed it. Pretty incredible.
It'd be impossible to see the path. Like the amount of things, the dominoes that had to fall, but he got the opportunity and he capitalized on it, and now he's the light heavyweight champion of the world. In less than 365 days since he said that. I mean, it's insane.
And nothing has changed. There's lots of people who are in Jamal Hill's position that we're talking about that could be in a title fight in less than 365 days. There is no order in that division. There is no hierarchy. There is no established kind of like tiers. It all needs to be sorted, and they need to fight each other to figure this out. But I would be open to nearly anybody who's ranked getting a title shot, to be honest.
So you bring up a great point. You know, when someone, like he was very emotional afterwards. He's been through a lot. His backstory is inspirational. We talked about it on the show. At one point, it seemed like he had no path to just even get to the UFC, let alone be a champion. But when someone wins a belt for the first time and is very emotional, and, you know, 205 has long been a glamour. This is Chuck Liddell's weight class. This is Tito Ortiz's weight class. John Jones's weight class. Rampage Jackson.
Daniel Cormier.
It's a glamour division. Dare I say, with a richer history than heavyweight. When in boxing, heavyweight is the glamour division and 205, if you will, cruiserweight, whatever, isn't necessarily that. I know 205 is less than cruiserweight. You get the point. Anyway, because this wasn't Leon Edwards having to scratch and claw, because this wasn't a guy who has had to go through, but like it almost seems, and again, this is not me hating, but there's a bit of a backdoor element to this. I mean, we just had a light heavyweight title fight. He was booked in a fight. Like, they didn't see him as a number one contender just yet. He was booked in a fight against Anthony Smith in March. Is that why the main event didn't feel as emotional to us viewers? No.
I felt that emotion. I mean, we don't have to go further back than the name you mentioned, John Jones. He slid into a title shot against Shogun Rua when Rashad Evans got injured.
But but the difference is John Jones beat the guy. John Jones beat the champ.
There is no guy. There is no guy in that division. There is no guy. There was no guy. When John Jones left, that guy was gone. There was no guy. I feel the emotion. I feel what he went through. And it didn't have to be in front of the UFC audience for us to kind of understand it. Like, he's been working his whole life and his whole career for that. I felt that. I felt that big time. And I think almost the compressed timeline almost makes it more emotional, if I'm being honest. The idea that like it couldn't have been real a year ago and then became real, that he thought maybe this was going to be a longer path, and then all of a sudden had to kick it into higher gear on that short a timeline. Went from watching on TV and a fight booked against Anthony Smith to an opportunity where he's going to get the title. That can mess with you, and that can make you crumble, and that can make you fold in the moment against a guy like Glover, who has been doing this for multiple decades. I felt every moment of that. I felt it intensely, actually.
Yeah, I actually sat with Rick because in another interview you did with Jamal Hill, he talks about like getting the answer on January 21st, and he just like, it almost seems like he's in disbelief, and then just like there's just something about seeing a moment where you know that someone's all their dreams just became true like that. Like when you're watching the NFL draft, the NBA draft, like a moment like that, you can just tell like all their hard work has just paid off for them. Like dreams are actually getting realized in front of our eyes.
I agree with your point though. Like we've been on the journey with Leon, right? We've all been along for the ride and seen it and seen every step brick by brick. And I get why that can be emotional, but I think this was just as interesting a story. And I said this on the watch party. Connor and Mike do an amazing watch party for the pay-per-views. Shout out to those guys. This is almost like this win almost doesn't have the impact it will ultimately have right now in this moment until we know what happens next. Like the win itself is going to either age better or worse depending on what happens next, and that's what I'm kind of excited about. If Jamal Hill goes on a run, this win becomes the moment that changed everything, and now he's this champion who's able to hold it and go on a long run. Or if he doesn't, it becomes more of its musical chairs. The moment kind of blends in and becomes insignificant. Like Yuri's title reign was supposed to be like, okay, now Yuri's here. Right. The division's going to be on track. He's gone. And he's hoping to get a title fight. What happens from here is going to determine how this moment ultimately is viewed in history.
Can I throw out another crazy thought? It feels like at 185, we have a champion who has the number of the former champion, Israel Adesanya. A lot of people think they fight 10 times, he wins 8, 9, whatever it is.
Yep.
However, the rest of the weight class, and maybe even the MMA community, don't necessarily think he's the baddest 85er on the planet. They say things like, oh, once Bo Nickel gets him, or Khamzat could even go up and get, you know what I mean? Like it feels like he's like the least respected of the champions right now in the UFC. Yep. However, there is a scenario where I feel like he could be a double champ.
Agreed.
Like who wins that?
Is massive.
Who wins that fight? Isn't that weird though? The guy that no one respects, or not no one, but you know, like is getting a lot of disrespect at 85, is actually the guy who could also beat the 205 champion right now. Yeah. Like you couldn't necessarily say that if Glover was champ. Obviously, relationship aside,
you also probably couldn't say that if Israel was champ.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, I've been thinking about that like ever since. It'd be just such a perfect story that like Jamal Hill beats Glover Teixeira, retires him, and then Glover Teixeira's boy Alex Pereira goes up to try to become double champ. Like I feel like there's no way it happens until Pereira has a defense at middleweight. But
especially against Izzy, right? You got to do the Izzy fight first.
But man, that would just be you talk about selling a fight, and you think Anthony Smith, Jamal Hill has sellability. I mean, Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill, that would be unbelievable.
These double champ things just muck too much stuff up.
Oh, I know.
Alex Volkanovski has done so much to be able to earn it. When you beat Max Holloway 3 times, I don't care. Like, you could pick your fight. You could fight at 170 if you want. Too. I don't even care. You have to get to that level before I'm willing to have that conversation. But if you're asking right now, if you plopped him into a fight with Jamal Hill, would he be competitive? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Incredibly competitive,
absolutely,
if not winning it.
Can I tell you my biggest disappointment of the night on Saturday? Not any result, not, didn't throw in the towel, whatever the case. Mm-hmm. I thought the crowd
I knew you were going to say that.
Was super underwhelming, right? I mean, we had heard so much about how they're excited to be back, blah, 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 blah. At one point, I actually WhatsApped Guilherme, and I was like, is this crowd dead or what's going on here? Because on television, it came across as completely dead. They would pop up here. They would pop, like even for the Shogun stuff, quiet. For Figueiredo, quiet. You heard a couple of Uva Mohed, nothing. And I'm not even talking about them throwing stuff in Moreno, which is like,
not good.
What the fuck was that? I mean, what is this? 1970s Memphis wrestling, throwing stuff at the guy because he beat your guy? Like they hugged it out, like chill out. But it just felt like the crowd was dead. By the end of the night, ton of empty seats. It was just weird. Was that not a very underwhelming, disappointing crowd? Like,
It felt like in the beginning, like with the prelim fights, obviously Brazilians being on every single fight, it felt like in the beginning the crowd was really there. Anytime there was a big moment for a Brazilian in the fights, you could hear them go crazy. But it felt like as the night went on, it never really amped up with the amping up of the card. Like,
yeah, the stakes, right?
Yeah, like it felt decent in the beginning, but it felt like it never really crescendoed. Like I thought they were going to be going absolutely bananas throughout that entire main card. Like Johnny Walker, a guy from Brazil, Andrade, Burns, like I thought they would be going bananas, and it never really felt like that energy was there. I feel like the moment I noticed it the most was when they were introducing Glover, and I was like, man, crowd doesn't really seem that loud.
No, and yes, it was a little bit later, right? They're 2 hours ahead, so by the time those guys are walking, it's 2 a.m. or so. But there's 30 something other Brazil cards from back in the day, which they were playing with the same set of rules. I don't know if it was because the ticket prices were higher, and so maybe that brings in a different kind of fan. I don't know, but I was a little bit disappointed.
I mean, I was saying all along they should have put this in the Apex.
Fuck off.
That's a great point, actually.
I mean, listen.
I'm just saying.
That underwhelming crowd, 1,000 times better than anything at the Apex, but still, I was expecting a little more.
That's fair.
And a reminder of just how great those European crowds are, right? Forget about UK. Like even the Paris crowd was fantastic, singing the freaking national anthem in the middle of the main event. It was unbelievable.
1 and 2 crowds of the year.
Yeah,
like it's different levels.
Just wait till they come back to Canada. It's gonna be lit.
Spain, Ilia Taporia. Let's go there.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Let's talk about. Can we talk about a place that they should go? Mexico. By the way, what a time for Mexican MMA. Moreno back as champion. You got Alexa Grasso fighting for the belt. Let's see what happens. Yair Rodriguez, the month before, just a few weeks' time, fighting for the featherweight title. Yep. We suspect Aldana. Interim, yes. We suspect Aldana fights Nunes, maybe April, maybe in New York City, not Brooklyn, maybe New York City. Stay tuned.
Oh, what?
Okay. There's a lot going on, and I'm definitely forgetting a bunch of people off the top of my head, but those are the ones fighting for the belt. Oh, yeah. I mean, we've got Raul Rojas, we've got who else? There's a bunch. Mexican MMA has never been better, healthier, more exciting. A card in Mexico with some of those names would be incredible. But what about Brandon Moreno? This guy having to lose his head coach, who he was. I know they hadn't been working together forever, but it seemed like they created a real bond. All that, tumultuousness, if you will. New head coach, some familiar faces, great. I saw a documentary which I tweeted earlier in which they showed, it's called The Last Dance, Brandon Moreno's, I think, UFC 283 documentary on YouTube is the name. He seemed to have injured his knee pretty badly just a few weeks ago. And I know everyone goes through stuff, but this seemed somewhat serious. Goes in there, enemy territory, and I thought was winning 3-0, right? I thought that he was up 3-0, and I don't think there was anything controversial about that. I said on Saturday, if they didn't have the history, I bet you could spin that into a little bit of controversy in that, it was somewhat unceremonious. This was a fight that he was going to win. It was very clear, and he's the best flyweight on the planet, and it's an amazing story. And now I'm excited. Like Alexandre Pantoja is not a household name, but they've got a history. And if they sell it correctly, the history on Tough, his last UFC fight before he got released as they were weeding out all the flyweights. Now he's the champ fighting this guy who's patiently been waiting for his shot. Interesting times at 125. What do you guys think? GC? I know you love this weight class.
Oh, it's one of I love the both ends of the spectrum. I love heavyweight, love flyweight. Yeah, I mean, how can you not be excited about it if you count the Tough fight, which was a real fight? I know it doesn't go on their official records, but Alexandre Pantoja has 2 wins over Brandon Moreno. I mean, I don't know how you can't sell it. That has to be the main focal point. Like, he's coming for the belt. He's 2-0 against this guy, and he has full intentions of getting it. I mean, I think that is the most obvious fight to make. They met up afterwards behind the scenes, and yeah, I can't wait for that one. I think it's going to be fireworks.
Almost more interesting than talking about that fight right now is talking about Figgy's future, right? How do you book this guy? Man. Because if you look at the top of the bantamweight division, a lot of those guys are booked, right? Like, we suspect that Aljo is going to fight Henry Cejudo if they wait for Aljo to come back, and I don't think he's going to fight on that March 4th card, but I'm not hearing otherwise. It's all very much up in the air. We know that Jan and Merab are going to be fighting in March. Tremendous fight. We know that Marlon and Corey are going to be fighting in February. We've got the Rob Fonts and the Dominic Cruzes of the world. And it's not like you have to book Figgy just yet. Obviously, you know, the eye messed up. He's going to need some time. He just went through a crazy fight, weight cut, all that stuff. Is it crazy, though, to suggest Figgy versus Sean O'Malley off the bat?
Odd man out. Let's do it. I think Figueiredo is going to have a really rough time at bantamweight.
Yeah,
I'm being
I mean, the
honest.
height, right? The height, the reach.
I think flyweight was the division where he was going to be successful. I would not expect that he has a great run at bantamweight, if I'm being honest.
I saw someone put out, obviously he's booked, but I felt like Petr Yan versus Figgy would have been fantastic.
I mean, he could fight the winner of that fight easily. He's not coming back tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
That's
true.
probably the most fun fight for him, but he's going to be facing either a bunch of wrestlers or a bunch of dudes who have longer reach and much more physical attributes over him, which is just a bad combination.
He's 35 now. Maybe at bantamweight he just does fun fights. Like,
yeah. He's also just not a high volume guy either. He's going to be in there with guys who I just think, from a technical standpoint, it's going to be very hard.
Figgy versus Rob Font, Dominic Cruz.
But what happens when Rob Font just sticks him on the end of a jab?
No, I know it's a tough spot.
Bad.
It's a really tough spot.
What would O'Malley's height advantage be over him? Like,
Yeah, dramatic.
Jed, you know what? So Jed Meshew dropped in here. I like this one. Figgy and Garbrandt. That's a fight. That's a fight. Give me that one. I'll take that all day.
He catches him and just puts him out.
Yeah,
I'll take that all day. That's a great.
As his intro, doesn't Garbrandt have a fight coming up? I mean, again, he could.
They were trying desperately to get him against Ronnie Yaya, I think.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how he does because I think like build wise, height wise, reach wise, flyweight is the weight class for him.
For sure.
The cut is just too difficult.
The cut is too much, but yeah, I mean, sure, why not? I think he's earned a top name. If he comes into the division and says I want a top guy off the bat, I think he's earned that by his flyweight title run. I think for sure he's earned that. He should be able to ask what he wants.
There's great symbolism in the fact that Moreno's fighting Pantoja, we suspect, for the belt because this was the fight that got him out of the UFC. So flyweight at one point was on its deathbed, now very much alive and well. You want to say something?
I was going to say, I know this is unpopular, but I would watch Figueiredo and Moreno again. Sorry, I just would.
For a fifth time? I mean, obviously.
Like, I'd watch it. But I want to see Moreno Pantoja.
I see I could see a world. I can picture it already. I can see the tweets already where Captain Eric and Henry are in his ear saying the eye was the thing.
Of course, that's what I said. It's sellable.
Start pretending that, that was the determining factor and now we're going to fight again.
But it's not fair to Pantoja. It's not fair to do
I also don't think the UFC is going to be like super gung-ho about doing that again. But man, I would watch those two fight forever.
UFC brass has to be so happy that Moreno won, not because they don't like Figgy, but to have a Mexican-born champion is huge for them.
Oh, he just has such a great story too. Like
so likable.
Yeah,
very easy to root for.
They're both of those guys. They kept this division afloat at a time when it was not a glamour division, and made it into something. And now it's exciting again. And now there's people who want to watch the flyweights. They both deserve a ton of credit. This rivalry, this is one of the best rivalries in UFC history, in my opinion.
Gilbert Burns, dominant win over Neil Magny. Unfortunately, it seems like every time Magny gets one of these big time spots, despite the fact that he has the most wins in the history of 170, doesn't prevail. Afterwards, I thought he would go the Bilal route. Burns went the Colby route. Colby's status very much up in the air.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
If Khamzat is coming back to 170, to me, the fight to make is Colby versus Khamzat and Burns versus Bilal. I love that, that 2-pack of fights.
I say you shoot for the moon and land on the stars.
If you're who?
If you're Gilbert.
Sure.
Fall for Colby, settle for Bilal if you have to.
Sure. The thing is, like with Colby, we are approaching a year since the Masvidal fight.
Yeah.
And, he used to be omnipresent in terms of media, in terms of being out there on social media. Like he has pretty much become MIA for whatever reason. Feels like he's lost all that momentum. Still, if they book Colby versus Khamzat, that would be a massive, massive fight. And there was talks that they wanted to do it over the summer and then maybe in the UK. We're not hearing anything at the moment, and that card is less than 2 months away. Which route would you go if both guys are available? If everyone is available, what do you do with Gilbert? Do you do the not the Khamzat fight, the Colby fight, or do you do the Bilal fight?
I would do it exactly how you laid it out, but
is that going to happen?
There's too much unknown. We really don't know. We haven't heard a peep from Colby Covington. Like, we don't know what the hell's going on.
It seems like Khamzat, from all pictures and videos that are coming out of him lately and the things that he's saying, Like, he's just standing by, waiting for someone to accept the fight against him.
Okay, so here's the thing. If Colby is just MIA and doesn't want to fight.
Gilbert versus Hamzat.
Again?
What? Again? That fight was amazing.
Well, I know, but we just saw it.
Yeah,
So
but does Chimaev take that? I feel like Chimaev would not take that.
Do it again. Nah, I don't think Hamzat Chimaev's in the business of turning down fights.
I mean, I
don't think he's doing
whatever he wants.
I don't think he's doing would turn it down because he's scared to fight Gilbert Burns again. I just feel like the upward trajectory, like if he's even going to stay at 170.
In that case, just wait for a title shot then. If you're not going to fight, Hamzat, just wait for a title shot. I think you would fight
Or would you do Hamzat versus Bilal?
I'm down for that.
Sure.
But then what do you do with Gilbert?
But this becomes a conversation. This conversation all basically becomes who's the next person to fight Hamzat. That's what this. That's what.
Well, he's the big. He's the big fish.
He's the big draw. But also, these three guys we're talking about Colby, Gilbert, and Bilal. All could be contenders, but they're all just going to have to go through Hamzat. It just becomes who's going to fight Hamzat.
Let me throw out two other names.
Hamzat needs to fight for the belt.
Gilbert versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
No.
I mean,
wait, what? You talk about? We just
5-6.
saw Hamzat. We just saw that, and that was a
he's coming off.
down.
He's coming off a win. Okay, fine. Okay, hey, I had another one. But this one is kind of unfair to Gilbert. If he gets by Jeff Neal, Gilbert versus Shavkat.
Oh man,
Gilbert would take it. I'll tell you that.
Yes, Gilbert would definitely
take it. I mean, what a test for Shavkat.
Well, then we'd really get to see how good is
Here's
Shavkat.
the problem with welterweight. It has now become Leon versus Kamaru.
Yeah.
And then Hamza or Gilbert, Bilal, whoever, versus the two guys that everybody thinks is going to murder everybody else in the division in Shavkat and Hamza. They've become essentially they've become prey for these two guys. I don't love that. I think do Gilbert versus Bilal if Hamzat's being cast aside for Colby. Let them both sit and wait for it. Or get them in the mix. Let's just stop waiting around for this.
I see. I couldn't agree more, and I also feel like Gilbert and Bilal. I know Gilbert last fought in April, but they are the ones who are active in game and don't seem to need like a lot of leeway. And
they'll take a fight.
So let's just make that fight. Why does it seem like Bilal isn't interested in that fight?
Because he's worked very hard, and he had a lot of people not want to fight with him to get these opportunities.
Right now, according to the UFC, they're 4-5, and you can make a very strong case that Gilbert should be ranked above him. I don't know. To me, it feels like they're in the exact same spot, meaning they're both top 4-ish welterweights. Let's see who's the better man.
Gilbert said at the presser that because Bilal was one rank above him, he wouldn't take the fight now because he
That's
didn't want to
crazy.
fight down. That's just what Gilbert said.
That's crazy. Although I like
Hamzat Bilal title eliminator. Winner gets a fight at the belt because right now there's no telling where Colby's at.
Well, it's a fresh matchup for Hamzat, so that's good.
Right.
That works in Bilal's case.
Maybe difficult stylistically for him.
We just need fights to be made. This division has been stagnant for too long.
Feels like for the last 3-4 years, right?
Let's just get it moving. I don't care who these guys fight, and honestly, I would consider Hamzat, Gilbert, Bilal some of the most game guys in the UFC. I don't think they probably are caring too much. Let's just get the fights going. Like, let's stop trying to make this perfect scenario.
I agree.
Where this guy gets this guy, and now all of a sudden we have the path to it. Make some fights. These guys are ready to go.
All right, fine. Hamzat Shavkat. Let's go.
Now we're really talking. Now we're talking dream
That would
matchups.
be the freaking best.
Too early.
Oh my gosh, that fight needs to happen for a belt one day.
Okay, so we're talking about the fights that need to happen. Can we talk about a fight that probably didn't have to happen? And I know this is Monday morning quarterback hindsight. The Shogun fight. It was just like, it was depressing.
Okay.
It was depressing. The whole thing was depressing. Who, with all due respect, who is Ihor Potieria? What did he do to deserve that spot? Why couldn't he have fought a Paul Craig? Why couldn't he have fought even a Johnny Walker? And I know you'll say he's going to be, but at least it's someone that can take that win. And now we don't know enough about this guy. And I'm not even getting into the celebration and all that stuff, which felt like, hey, bro, read the room. And everyone's like, all right, there's X, Y, and Z reason why he was doing that. And he's been through his own stuff. And I'm not trying to I'm sure his struggle has been incredible. And like what he's had to overcome, it's been unbelievably inspiring. And he's coming from a place right now that can use inspiration, Ukraine. I'm not trying to take anything away from the guy. But I mean, how many people knew who this guy was, Ihor Potieria, going into this fight? And it just feels like, why do we always have to kill off the guy? Look, someone has to win, someone has to lose. But why does it always feel like, let's put the legend in there against the lesser known, young, up-and-comer? And more often than not, nothing happens to that young up-and-comer. They're unable to capitalize off the win. It just becomes a very depressing, sad scene.
The problem with this is the legend is accepting the fight and thinking that this is a fight they can win and going in there and competing. I have a hard time getting
But they
upset.
also would have accepted the Paul Craig fight.
Maybe. Do I know that? I don't know that.
What do you mean? You don't know that? Of course he would have accepted that fight.
I don't know that. Was that fight offered and
This argument is the same as people who say, oh, you can't talk about fighter pay and pensions and stuff because they signed the contracts. Well, no.
No, it's not the same.
It is the same. That's what people say to me when I bring that up. They're like, oh, they signed the contracts. There's no gun to their head.
If Shogun knocked him out, we'd be talking about how it was great booking. I can't. Look, there are names that you can put him against, that you can put Shogun against, that would have made for a more notable fight, right? You mentioned some of them. If Johnny Walker or Paul Craig, instead of fighting each other, fought Shogun, we'd be like, okay.
Anthony Smith.
Notable names. But what happens when Johnny Walker or Paul Craig starches Shogun? Now what?
It's Johnny Walker, Paul Craig. We know who they are. Now they could take that win and maybe do something with it.
They were already going to do something. I don't care.
Feels like the fight is bigger. But by the way,
it either is we don't let them fight or we deal with the outcomes. That's it.
Am I crazy for thinking it's dumb to put Shogun's retirement fight on free TV? Like, might as well make that into an attraction that you need to pay for, right?
Sure.
This is the last time you got to pay for this, to give that away, to end the prelims on ABC on that note. Like, you're supposed to end. Imagine you end it with Johnny Walker doing what he did to Paul Craig. You're sitting on ABC and you're like, shit, this is some crazy shit. I got to go watch this now. To end it on that note, if you're familiar somewhat with the story of Shogun, if you were paying attention to the broadcast, like, this was super depressing.
But can I propose that maybe we care more about Shogun than the paying public does?
Sure. I mean, I can only speak for myself, really.
Like, we care more about Shogun. To me, that's an unfortunate end to a great UFC run and a legacy and a career that is worth celebrating. But does the paying public even?
You should have at least have a Wikipedia page if you're going to fight a guy like Shogun in his retirement.
For the paying public,
I
it's the birth
can
of
accept
Ihor Pretoria.
But it can't be the situation where, like, yeah, they always lose. Okay, well, then they shouldn't have fought.
Can we at least put them, I was thinking about this, like a Matt Brown, Carlos Condit type fight where you have two guys in their late 30s. Like, that's a retirement fight.
I'm all for it.
A Jim Miller, Donald Cerrone. That's how you should treat the legends on the way out.
What if they win?
Not Chris Gutierrez versus Frankie Edgar, not Ihor Pretoria versus Shogun Rua. You know what I'm saying?
I'm with it. I can support that. If it's one or the other, cool. I will take it. I will take that type of fight. But I just can't. I can't be too upset when it happens. This is the nature of this business.
It's not pro wrestling. And by the way, if it was pro wrestling, Shogun Rua, Ric Flair, he goes up against Shawn Michaels. He doesn't go up against a young jobber.
It's not pro wrestling.
But I'm just saying that's where this thought process is coming from. You gotta do the job on the way out. No, you don't. You don't have to do the job on the way out. Let the guy have his moment. Let him have his win.
But how do you?
Put him in there. Equal fight.
Who is he beating?
No, put him in there against a fellow 39-year-old.
Okay, so now the options are very limited. Who?
Yeah, I named Anthony Smith. Put him in there against Anthony Smith. I know we saw that.
Anthony Smith.
Okay, good win, Anthony Smith.
Thing over and over.
Good win, Anthony Smith. That's what I would say.
You're combining two things. You either care about him winning.
I care. I
mean, or care about the stakes of the fight.
I just want it to be fair. I can't work the fight. I can't work it.
That's what I'm saying.
I feel like
make it fair.
Smith, Shogun
it's fair.
Not fair.
It was fair.
I feel like he would starch him in the first.
It's the same fairness. There's no difference in fairness. There's a difference in notability in who the opponent is. I agree with you 100% on that. No doubt. This could have been a more significant fight if it was Paul Craig or Johnny Walker. Absolutely. No doubt. But is he going to win? No. Is it going to be just as sad? Yeah.
Where's Lil Nog at?
Okay. Well, I mean, it's funny because I was talking about that trilogy last time. You were talking about Hendo, and I was talking about that. That is a really those three have put in a great. Those two have put on 3 great fights. But
can I give props to the UFC because people say I don't do that?
Sure.
I thought they did a great job, despite the fact that the crowd sucked. I thought they did a great job of making it feel special that they were in Brazil. The promos, the one with the kid writing them a letter, that was amazing. The Shogun stuff was great. And there was another one like with all the Brazilian fighters talking about the history and even, let's give them props, like showing Anderson Silva The Aldo retirement situation, of course, Anderson should be in there first, but let's not nitpick. Like, all in all, one thing that we've said in the past is like, oh, the product doesn't look different if they're in Paris or New York or Brazil or Mexico. Here, if you're watching at home, I feel like they did a good enough job of letting you know we're in a special place. This is different. This isn't your run-of-the-mill event. I liked it very much, so kudos to them.
I 10,000% agree. I want to propose something to you.
Oh.
And not to be a Debbie Downer.
Oh.
But from a practicality standpoint, do you think if they didn't have the time off, right, from the last pay-per-view, that it would have been this? Or it would have just kept rolling?
No. I mean, they had a show last week.
I know, but there's some downtime, right? There's an ability to kind of, it's the same argument around like, do we think the fights would be special if there was just less fight nights and all those things? I think because they had the time off and they were able to focus in, that they were able to do something like this. I don't know that it happens if it's just one pay-per-view, 3 fight nights in between, next pay-per-view.
Well, guess what? It's a valid point, but guess what? I guess we'll get the answer to that question in 3 weeks when they're in Perth, right? Because they should do the same sort of thing in Perth.
Yeah, 100%.
They should make it feel special,
That's a good point. Let's find out. But now back to the positive side. Everything you're talking about, it all worked. It all felt like this is significant. Here's the stakes of this fight. Here's why it matters. Here's why us being back in Brazil matters. And I feel like all week it kind of felt that way. I dug what they did.
I thought it was great, because we heard a couple of weeks ago, essentially in so many words, the ship is going to sink if I'm not there. I thought it was great to have Dana there all week doing press conferences, a lot of presence, a lot of media stuff. I thought it was really,
good,
notable, right? I thought, because we heard if he's out of the picture, how's the company going to prevail? So I thought that was really important to do that.
I can expect them to do the same in Australia as well.
Yeah, for sure. One last thing before we get to our first guest. Tough one for our guy, T-Rex.
Yeah.
That's it? So matter of fact.
That's his style. That's
him.
His style.
I know.
He's kill or be killed. That's how it's been his entire career. All 4 of his losses prior to that
it's a tough one. It was tough to see him go out cold like that.
I think he will have
time he's been finished by knees in the UFC.
I think he will have a very long and lucrative and productive UFC career, being a guy who comes in there and brings action and kills or be killed.
It felt like he was trying to slow it down. It felt like he was trying to be more patient, and that just isn't who he is. I can guarantee you this. The next time he fights, I will be watching.
That's it.
Pretty much every time he fights, I am going to be watching because no matter what, it's exciting.
100%. But you could have made a strong case. Wins that fight, maybe he is really considered for the Paddy fight now, obviously.
Why does the win matter? Why is he now
he's more considered?
Yeah, maybe he's more considered. I mean, also you gotta say the.
I guess they're both coming off losses, right?
The Bonfim brothers are legit, man.
He slipped in there. I caught that. Yeah, why not? Do it. I like that fight.
T-Rex.
Who doesn't like that fight?
I love it. I mean, I would have done it next.
He'll promote it. That's the thing. Wherever he is on the card.
Who wins that fight right now? Who wins that fight right now?
T-Rex.
T-Rex or Paddy?
Oh,
T-Rex.
What? I really don't.
Horse McKinney.
Really?
Oh, round 1.
Oh, man.
For real? Round 1?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what Terrence
I'd be
McKinney
surprised
does,
if he
man. Have you
opened-
watched the dude fight? It's
surprised.
rare when he doesn't put people out in the first round if he's winning.
I'd be surprised if the line on that was lower than 250.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you. Minus 250?
Nah. People will play Paddy.
Yeah, that's
a lot
true.
of
he gets
people will play Paddy.
a Cowboys.
I bet you'll get it
Lakers
minus
boost. You're right.
130.
Yeah.
Minus 140. People love Paddy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. McKinney would wrap.
Will they make that fight? Probably not.
Probably not, no.
Be smart to.
The Bonfim brothers had a great Saturday night.
Any better? Could it be any better?
I mean, 2 incredible wins. Gabriel and Ishmael. Gabriel winning in 49 seconds. Great performances throughout, and especially on the prelims. There was a stretch there of the ABC prelims were tremendous.
I would watch Jessica Andrade fight for either title right now.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Flyweight, let's do it.
She's incredible.
Andrade Jong too.
Very inspirational. Not as inspirational as Josiane Nunez and her big comeback. Defying
the greatest comeback in UFC history.
Defying on the odds. What a great pick that was.